Welcome, everybody, to this month's Intentional Success webinar. I'm Tom Stimson, and we're going to talk about our industry response and our business response to the COVID-19 epidemic, pandemic, in the live events industry. This is a big deal. This thing normally lasts an hour. We're going to run a little bit longer. I have a lot to convey. I have a lot of stuff that I want to share with you in this first round, and I know you have a lot of questions. I want to stay on as long as I can. Many of you are first timers, you're new to this. Welcome, we're glad to have you here. Let me tell you who I am. I'm Tom Stimson. I'm president of the Stimson Group. I've been in the AV industry since, I would say roughly 1981, maybe 82, depending on what you count as the first gig. I've been in live events since I was 8 years old. I have been advising, consulting with business owners and management teams in the live events industry since 2006. I've been sharing what I know about the live events industry since 2002, probably, is when I wrote my first magazine articles. Everything I do is about helping you guys run your business better. And thankfully, I've got some great clients that help pay me for the advice and the support that I give them, and let me share some of that with you guys. So thank you all for being here. There's all the stuff on the screen. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever your social media of choice is. I'm not big on the Twitter or Instagram, but we do have a pretty active Facebook community at AV Matters going on. And of course, all the newsletters and everything. Visit my website. Great. So here we are. Well, now what? Let me first say, just to counter a lot of posts that I'm seeing on social media, our industry isn't dead. We're going to be dark for a little bit. Everybody in theater knows what dark means. We're going to be dark for a while, but we have some important work to do. For many of you, it starts today. Many of you have been working on this for a couple of weeks. I have been involved for the past 3 weeks, pretty deep in crisis response, crisis management, crisis anticipation. The past week, it's been pretty nonstop. It's been devastating. It's devastating for a lot of folks. But I need to give you the information that you need to have to make good decisions, validate the decisions you've already made, prepare for what's to come. I'm looking around the corner. It's what I do. I'm not always going to be 100% right, but this is what I do for a living. So a lot of people listen to me. Please use the information applied to your best understanding of the world and your business, and we're all going to be better off for that. So, this is the webinar we didn't really want, right? But we definitely need it. Great, the questions are already started. You guys are awesome. All right. We have moved from what was an abundance of caution 9 days ago. Monday, week ago, we were still making decisions based on an abundance of caution. Events were canceling out of an abundance of caution. We have now moved into outright necessity, and I'm going to be very firm on this. Okay? If you believe that this isn't necessary, if you believe that anything is an overreaction, this is not the webinar for you. I'm going to tell you how to navigate the world where we are doing everything that we should be doing to manage the pandemic from a business point of view. Here's the straight dope. And for those of you that are new to me, this is all I know how to do. I only know how to tell it, how I see it. This is my job. This is what I do. I'm going to tell you some things that are going to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you some things that are a little bit scary. I'm sorry, but you need to hear it. First thing, if you have not shut down your office already, do it. Just do it. Social distancing is the only way to slow this down. Typically, when I do these webinars, a bunch of you are sitting around a conference table, you're talking together, you're communicating about all this. You should all be home right now doing this. There's really nothing at your office that needs to be done that is worth the risk of transmitting the disease, the virus, to anybody that you work with or anybody that you come in contact along the way. I'm very serious about this. Figure out how to get out of that office as quickly as you can. Shut it down if you haven't done it already. Most of you are already deep into layoffs. I haven't talked to anybody in the past week who isn't. It's hard. I know it's difficult. Sometimes you're doing furloughs. That's great. We'll talk a little bit about that. Furloughs are nice because people can stay on your health care plan. They can maintain their benefits. They can collect their PTOs. through like a regular paycheck cycle, as opposed to layoffs, which are pretty permanent. Functionally for your business, there's not that much difference, but if you can afford to keep people's healthcare and benefits going forward for as long as you can help them stay on healthcare, I encourage you to do that. That's the one thing that we need to consider. Healthcare is more valuable to most of us right now than an actual paycheck. And younger people may not realize that, but they're going to find out really, really soon. So furloughs, let them stay on healthcare plans. I'll tell you how some of the folks I've talked to are dealing with it, so you have some ideas of what that might look like. Here's the hard one. You need to be forecasting zero revenue in live events, production rental, content production, anything that puts an audience in the room. If that's your business, no revenue through August. Just think about that, through August. Let me put this in perspective. That may be farther out than most people think is prudent or reasonable. Freeman Company, multi-billion-dollar corporation, stalwart of our industry, furloughed 7,200 people for 90 days. That's their first pass, 90 days. And that takes us well into summer. I'm sure they'll be looking at it again, but I don't think our pipeline is going to start up that quickly over the summer. Even if suddenly in 8 weeks we were all released from quarantine, the business is not going to come back nearly quick enough. So do that budget. That's a hard budget. It's not the worst case scenario, but it is certainly the most likely scenario. And if you don't budget that way, you will not make the decisions you need to make now. If you have to make hard decisions, make them now. Every time you postpone them or do incremental decisions, you're limiting, you're reducing, your cash on hand. You're making it harder for your company to survive and actually have a rebound. I'm very sensitive about the workers. I've got plenty of stories I'd like to share with you, but we probably won't have the time. But the fact is, your job is to keep the business going. And there'll be a core group of people that you need to do that so you can restart the business. You need to focus on that. We've not seen anything like this really in my lifetime. I'm sorry, I'm an old guy. I've been at this for a long time. We had a huge recession in 1987. We survived it. It's nothing like this. We had the 2000 recession, the 2001 9/11. That was a 3-month hiatus. Business came back. Some of you lived through things like Katrina. You saw your businesses stop, but that didn't stop the economy all around you. What's going on right now is going to stop the economy throughout the world, to be quite honest with you. So there's some straight dope. Take a deep breath. Okay, now think about being helpful right now. There's some very helpful things that you can do. There's time to think about other people, and part of what you need to be doing right now is that. Have employee assistance plans. The number one thing you can do for your employees is communicate honestly and communicate often. It's actually kind of difficult to over-communicate right now during this period. You've got a client base to communicate with. Be helpful to them. They've not been through this either. They don't know how to undo an event. They don't know how to postpone. You can help them reschedule. You can help them talk about their fall events and how they should reschedule them and maybe how far back they should go. I was working with a client last week, or I take it back, actually it was this week. Had a major event, client wanted to put it on Labor Day, but they're also looking at November, and I strongly encourage them to steer that client to November. I got a 50-50 chance that they can do the Labor Day event. I'm much more optimistic about them doing a November event. Help them make good decisions. You've got relationships to maintain. Be part of their solution, not part of their problem. You've gotten the emails. You've seen, you're getting it from everybody that you're on an email list for. You've got a sanitizing protocol. You just got to at least put it out there. Help people understand that you're aware of what's going on. There's some basic steps that you're taking. You're trying to protect your employees. You're trying to protect your customers and anybody that's in your community. Get that message out there. It's the least that you can do, and it's helpful. It helps everybody get their minds refocused on what we should be doing right now. I'm seeing a lot of ads, Facebook posts about free tech training, emails about free tech training. Um, Fortunately, they went from, hey, we're going to have training in our office next week to, hey, we've moved it online. So move it online by all means, but also keep in mind, you could probably wait a week or 2 or 3 before we have the emotional and mental bandwidth to deal with it. People are going to be reeling pretty much for the next 2 weeks. Make sure that your messages and your helpfulness is appropriately timed. If you have a studio, or you're setting up a streaming studio, you need to treat it like an operating room. But seriously, stay home and encourage your customers to stay home. I hate to see anybody forego revenue, but let's look at what we all need as a society. But if you are going to do some studio work, limit the crew, take every precaution, suit up, protect your client, and protect your employees in that process. Again, it's just another way of being helpful. Some of you have a lot of trucks and vans. Right now, your community is in need a lot of help. Find ways, if you want to keep some people employed or give them an outlet for volunteer work, let them use your trucks and vans to do that. We've got, food banks that we have restaurants that would love to do delivery. You can actually get paid for it. We have shut-ins that need things picked up for them, grocery shopping. Every grocery chain is hiring people to do home deliveries for groceries. And of course, Amazon is hiring 100,000 people. You may have an opportunity to put some people to work and find them some way to maintain a little bit of income above their unemployment income or whatever severance you might be able to give them. So figure out ways that you're going to be helpful. So we've had the straight dope. We've had a little bit of helpfulness. Let's do a little bit of hope. I'm getting quite a few positive signs, and I tend to latch onto those positive things because they help me get through this as I talk to people, for 10, 12 hours a day about these crises. I find that clients have been very, very helpful in negotiating cancellation costs. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Be receptive to their ideas, be creative, and offer them solutions that they might not otherwise expect. Banks and landlords have been very amenable to 90-day grace periods. Call them now. Any institution that you work with, they will talk to you. Insurance companies, leasing companies, banks, landlord companies. Talk to these people, get yourself some grace. There may be some other support that comes from the federal government when they get their act together, but right now you need to look after yourself. Great place to start. Everybody I know who has done this has been very pleased with the response that they've got. We are still seeing engagement on fall projects. Now that could be a false hope. It could be a false positive, but the point is that clients are looking out and saying, hey, we think we can do this. We think this is important. We hope everything holds together or returns so that we can do that. Now, you have an opportunity to execute and get paid for some pre-production, get some deposit money up front on those events and use that money where you don't have to give it back. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Fabrication projects, many of you are also in the integration business, along with your live events business. As you see, those projects are still running. They're not shut down. A lot of the buildings we're working in will be empty, which might make your job easier. School work is still going on until we are asked to stay home. If you're building scenery for future projects, you can store it. So if you've got fabrication work, treat it like a transaction that you can get paid on, even if you have to sit on the finished product for a while. So there's some hope there. What I'd like to do now is take you through some scenarios of that I've learned from companies. I've talked to dozens of people. I'm actually on my second notebook for March right now with notes from everybody I've talked to. But here's what they're telling me they're doing. Some of these case studies I'm going to show you are not enough. But I want you to understand where people are coming from, the different levels of thinking. Your thinking is probably at a level that needs to move farther forward, and that's part of what you're going to learn in this webinar. So you will see yourself in some of these examples, and maybe realize that you need to go a little bit further. This is the only silly graphic I'm going to show you, the only metaphor I'm going to work with today. Most of us are not going to see an airplane for some time. Um, I personally, I'm kind of grateful for that because I'm really tired of years of traveling. But there are what I've determined are basically 7 stages of awareness. The first 5 stages of awareness follow the same pattern as the stages of grief. You know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So what I've done is I've put these into things that we probably will all understand. You know what it's like. You just boarded the airplane. You're boarding. You're just finding out what's going on. Is this plane going to be packed? Do people know how to get on the plane? You turn that corner right in front of the flight attendant station, then all of a sudden, you're a little bit confused. You're going to get to your seat eventually, but you've got a lot of noise and you're not sure what to think. You don't know how this is going to go. About that time, you start looking for overhead space. So while we might be a little bit in denial about what we're about to go through, when we start looking for overhead space, most of us immediately get angry because we see people using it improperly. We start to spread the blame around a little bit. We try to wonder who's going to fix this for me? Who's going to make sure that I have space in my overhead? It really becomes all about me, and this is normal. A lot of businesses, a lot of business owners, a lot of independent business people, freelancers, as a freelancer for years, right now are going, who is going to take care of me? And this is that anger coming out. And sometimes it's going to come out sideways. Recognize this in yourself, recognize it in others, because it will pass. They will move on to the next stage. Eventually, you're going to sit down in that chair and we'll go, you know what? If we all sit down, maybe this plane will take off and we can get moving. Companies that have reached that stage said, okay, well, maybe if we reduce some hours, maybe if we just do some work in the warehouse, maybe lay off a few people who are low performers, close an office that's not really busy right now, maybe that'll be enough and that'll be good enough. I'm in my seat, maybe this will work. Then there's that next stage, you know, going from bargaining. I've done enough. I did this. Shouldn't that be enough? Into that depression stage where I fastened my seatbelt. I can't get off this airplane. I'm thinking about that second round of layoffs. I'm negotiating debt pauses. I'm wondering if everything I'm doing is going to be enough. And it becomes a little bit depressing. And right now, honestly, that's where I'm finding most of the business owners I'm talking to. They're a little bit depressed. We'll get past it. We are a resilient group of people. We are show people. And by God, the show will go on and we will get past this. Then there's that airplane mode. You know, some people won't put their phone into airplane mode until you're about to take off. You know, they got their laptop out on the tray table until the flight attendant stands there and makes them put away. You know, these people make the rest of us even more depressed. But once we take off, everything's in airplane mode, and there's nothing you can do but wait. Okay? You're going to wait it out. You're down to your skeleton crew. You've had your last layoff, and now it's the sooner this is over, the more cash I'll have to get started up. The longer it goes, the less cash I'm going to have, and you're really into a waiting game. Okay? That's where we want to get to. That's where I want you to get to, is your airplane mode, whatever it might be. Some people work in airplane mode. I'm not one of those people. I don't work in airplane mode. I read a book. I watch my, shows on my iPad or on my phone, listen to music. But everybody does their airplane mode differently. You do you. Then eventually, down the road, we're going to be landing. We know that we're landing. We start putting stuff away. We start getting ready to scale back up. We start having conversations. You listen to the conversations on airplanes. They start getting busier. And then you get at that gate, and we're all raring to go. We can't get off that plane fast enough. I can't wait for that time. The question is, when is it going to happen? So we have all these stages that we can go through, and they're coming. Know where you're at, get through it. Here's some examples of what I've seen. And all right. I call all of these honest responses because everybody I've talked to has said, honestly, here's what we're doing. Everybody's being very sincere about what they're doing. Everybody's trying to do the right thing. So I've categorized these kind of where I saw them on that airplane based on my conversation with them. How much did I have to educate them about what was coming up ahead? You know, how realistic were they being? Here's an example, and I got this from more than one company, but you know, when I talked to them on Monday, you know, they had just announced a 2-week shutdown, which was mandated by the governor of their state. They hadn't planned on sending everybody home, but they were told they had to. They've laid off a bunch of hourly people. They hadn't really thought about what to do with everybody else other than to send them home and tell them to work from home. They had planned on doing shop work and reduced hours, but they can't. They're being told they can't do that. You know, this is very much that, you know, that boarding to sitting down phase where we're a little bit of denial about what's going on. We're kind of negotiating or bargaining about what might come next. Maybe we haven't bought into everything, or we haven't watched enough good information to understand what's going on. We haven't realized how far out. Usually when I tell these people that expect no revenue until August, now redo your financials and make your decisions that way, they generally move right through the stages a lot more quickly. You may find yourself at any one of these stages. Figure out how to get yourself to the next stage. Honest response B, sitting down to fasten your seatbelts. You know, the theme for companies like this is, you know, I make a plan, I change it. When I make a plan, we learn something new, we have to change it. And they're going, my goodness, when do we stop changing the plan? It seems to be changing hourly. And guess what? It is. It is changing hourly. These companies have typically reduced staff by 60%, which is about the average of people I've talked to up until yesterday. They're still seeing some mission critical jobs, you know, streaming jobs and things that are staying in their pipeline. They have a few jobs where they probably just haven't heard from the client yet. You know, the end of May job is not notified that they're going to cancel or postpone. They've got a streaming studio. It's active, but they're thinking maybe that needs to be shut down as well. Most of these companies are planning little or no revenue through May. You know, that's their timeline. And April, May, 2 months seems pretty reasonable. June, July, Tom, even August, 5 months seems a little bit crazy, but continue to listen and hear me out. Sitting down to fasten your seatbelts. I'm seeing this company had 70% staff reduction. They are down to what they call their skeleton crew, but they also have a skeleton crew 2 planned. They have some things that they can get done. They have some stuff they can button up, but if this extends longer than they thought, they're thinking no revenue through July. But if they see it's going to go longer than that, then they're going to drop down to an even lower level of skeleton crew. They've had to lay everyone else off. And they've kept a couple sales folks to talk to customers who, by the way, will get laid off at some point. Everybody's working from home. There's still conversations about streaming jobs. They're going to do the sanitized protocol. They're going to do the minimum crew. They don't expect it to last very long. So little or no revenue through July. D, this is the proactive planning to fasten your seatbelts, folks. This particular company started having this conversation almost 4 weeks ago, probably 4 weeks ago this Friday. They immediately started talking to customers about postponing events, and they started steering them to fall dates that were favorable for their business. Clients were very receptive about this. It got their clients thinking a little bit more proactively, gave their clients a jump on everybody else canceling. It made some venues available to them that might not have been available otherwise because they called early enough. So very, very good client management plan. They have pre-production work for fall work. They accelerated. They told the clients, I said, why don't we get that work done now while I have employees to do that? If I have to furlough people, I can't get that work done for you. Let's do it now. The client said, yo, thank you. And they did it. They were working from home as of this week. My conversation with them was on Monday. Everybody was going home at the end of the day. They let their techs, they have no work for at all, to use their PTO to fill their paycheck for the time being. Now, unfortunately, they have not done the cash projections and made determinations about furloughs or layoffs yet. They like I said, they were proactive, but their follow through has not been complete. They do have a fabrication scenic shop that's kind of busy finishing projects that are in the pipeline, so they can collect the payment on that. But they will be forced to close, they know, pretty darn soon. Another response, E. All right. This was a long-time client. I haven't worked with them for a couple of years, but I worked with them pretty extensively for about 4 years. When they originally hired me, they were in a cash flow crisis. They'd been successful for 20 years. We reorganized their cash flow, and I was very happy when he called me back and he told me what they were doing. The first thing he said to me, he says, Tom, we didn't act fast enough after 9/11. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Here's all the things we did. He just rattled off a list of things. He didn't even wait for me to say hello. He knew why I was calling. So they know they have zero revenue through the summer, but for them, that's actually kind of normal. They typically furlough all their technical crew from mid-June to mid-August. So this is not, the timing was pretty good for them. They went ahead and laid off some underperformers. They furloughed all hourly folks, and they're paying their health care in total for, well, the foreseeable future. Probably the duration, because they're in a good cash position to do that. Management's all working remotely. They've closed all the warehouses. There's zero work on their books. And this is not an insignificant company. They probably have 150 employees. He has, through his good business practices and the changes in their model that we've instituted over the years, he's got cash reserves to maintain all of that support for his employees through the end of the year if he has no revenue for the rest of the year. He's not going anywhere. This is exactly where I want all of you to be, but I can't get you there this week or next week. When we get back from all of this, we're going to be working really hard on the things that are going to make this industry more durable, like these guys. God love him. He's really looking out for his employees. He's taking good care of his business so he can take good care of his employees, and I couldn't be prouder of him. This is another response. This is a guy who went from boarding to airplane mode in like nothing flat. I talked to them on Monday last week. They said, hey, they're kind of upside down, but right now we're not seeing a lot of cancellations. We're just going to keep going. We'll reduce some hours if we need to. By Thursday night, it was, we'll talk to you in the morning. We're doing the layoffs. So boom, they went there really quick. The handwriting was on the wall. They had to lay off all of their hourly employees. They kept business development, a couple of owners. They've renegotiated all of their payables, receivables, leases, and loans. They've cut the pay of the 3 people remaining by 50%. They've calculated cash flow to last them until August. I mean, they are down to the bare bones, and they did it really fast. And they're strategizing from home on building a new business model. And they are a client, so this is what we're talking about. What's the business plan for when you come out of this? What are you going to look like? How is it going to be different? So it's been an emotional a couple of weeks, particularly the last several days, listening to all these stories. And I've got 24 more stories like this, but this is pretty representative of what I'm seeing. Pause. Okay. Let's talk about some things that you need to deal with right now. We're back in business mode. You've got real issues that you're trying to deal with right now. Let me give you some thoughts and ideas on how to do that. You have jobs that are canceling. You have deposits in your hand. I can't help you with the cancellations. The jobs are going to cancel. There's nothing we can do about it. But if you have deposit money in hand, and what customer wouldn't be asking for that money back right now because they probably need it too? We need to know how to have that conversation. The problem in our industry is our terms and conditions are really old and out of date. I mean, they're very 1990s rental company stuff, and it doesn't deal with it. We ask for a 50% deposit, and all we're asking for is half the money up front, which basically says, I don't trust you to pay me. But we're not actually saying what the money is for, which means when it's time to cancel, what do we fall back on? What do we talk about? So let me give you a couple of things to talk about. So whatever deposit amount, do not talk about it as a percentage. Percentages are not business concepts. When the customer says, well, that 50% we gave you, so well, you gave us $10,000 and here's what it goes to. So some of that deposit amount, perhaps a quarter of it, goes to reserving your capacity and covering the overhead so that you don't sell it to anyone else. And people understand that. This is kind of like the non-refundable piece of it. You've burned hours for project management, drawings, site surveys, and things like that. We need to recover those hours. Give them the number. You know, we've got $1,500 in project management and drawings done for you. You have subcontractors that you're going to cancel. It's reasonable, if you're only 4 weeks out or less, to remit something to those companies. That's part of that deposit. I've got to pay these people. I've got to give them something. 25% of what I contracted them for would be reasonable. I am acting as your customer. I am acting as your agent in this transaction. So let me do the right thing. It reflects on you as well as reflecting on me. Then there may be a balance left after that, in which case you can now have an honest conversation with them that said, look, what I'd like to ask you to consider is letting me use that balance to help my furloughed employees. I can pay them longer, I can pay for more health care, I can give them more severance pay, but at the very least, let me apply it to your next event. Whichever one makes them happy, either way, you're asking to keep it, and you should. That's money that can go. It's already out of their hands, and generally in large corporations, it's not going to hurt them like it's going to hurt small businesses to give it back. But make that conversation easier for the customer by quantifying it instead of using percentages and, well, being indignant. So hopefully that will help some of you navigate those deposits. You need to manage cash. Cash is king. Cash is going to be absolutely critical through whatever you're going through. You have debt, you have payables. We'll talk about receivables as well. Notify landlords, banks, leasing companies, everybody I talked about earlier, ask for 3 months grace, and then ask to go interest only after that. I would ask for 3 months of total grace and then go interest only through the end of the year. That's a great starting point. It's logical. It's very businesslike. Several people I've talked to have been very successful with that pitch. Collect your receivables. My belief is that everything that you need to collect in the next 2 weeks. In 30 days, that money's gone. Even if you just finished a job, you just sent them the invoice, it's not due for 30 days, go collect it right now, and here's how you do it. You go to them and you offer them, say, look, we are in dire straits, we are shutting down, I'm furloughing employees, I'm doing everything I can to help them out. I need your money now. What I'd like to do is say, I will factor or reduce or negotiate your bill down by 25% if you can wire me the money tomorrow or today. If that receivable is already more than 30 days old, I would take 50 cents on the dollar. Money in your hand is far more valuable than somebody owing you money 6 months from now that you're never going to get paid. Get the money. Turn this around. You have payables. Now, I'm very militant about paying freelancers and other people, paying for, human services, people's time. By all means, make that the highest priority on your payables. But everything else you can factor and negotiate. So it's okay to go back to your suppliers and say, look, we're in the same boat here. You need cash, I need cash. Let me pay you 50 cents on the dollar. Let me pay you 50% of this job, and we'll call it even. And I will remember this when we're working again, and most people are going to take it. That cash in hand is very, very valuable. So partial payments or somehow reduced settlement will help get you through, make it last a little bit longer. If you need to, grab a low interest credit card. They're still available out there. I don't want you to take on more debt than you can, but obviously some of you are going to have to take on debt because you don't have cash reserves. Your business is not healthy enough to sustain this. So consider doing that. And then if you have the means to invest back into your business, you might need to do that, but I would recommend do everything you can before you start taking money out of your retirement or liquidating any assets to bolster your business. Do the hard math of your business not having income through August make those choices, and then it'll be less important. If you can make the math work, then you probably won't have to put money back into the business. I can't promise it, but your odds are much, much better. But know that you probably have those means available to you if you think about it. I picked up, I'm writing down good ideas as I hear them. I am typically seeing 30 to 50% salary reductions. 30% should probably be the minimum in these circumstances. It is a hardship. It is a huge hardship, and it's a real hardship when you're asking the managers in the room to buy into this idea. I remember after 9/11, it was 24 hours later, the senior management of the firm I worked with, we went off property, we sat down in a bar, we ordered a drink, and we honestly didn't drink them. And we tried to figure out what to do next, knowing we'd have to lay people off and make some hard choices. And it was a 20% pay cut, which in hindsight seems, wow, I was lucky. But it was really hard knowing that I was gonna have to go home and tell my wife, and we had 2 kids in private school, and we weren't, really living high on the hog anyway, pretty hand to mouth to say, we're gonna have to do this, knowing that we were more affected than the rest of the world was. Some industries had a bump, they were in a recession, but the 9/11 thing, no travel, no events for 90 days was a huge hardship that other industries didn't have to suffer. It was hard sell. It was a very hard drive home that night and a very uncomfortable conversation, but you got to do it. It's better to do that and continue to have that job, continue to have a role. And owners, when you say, I will remember this and I will take care of you later, boy, I hope you know exactly what you're saying and you do exactly that, because you will rebound from all of this, but you need to take care of those people down the road. You'll never make them whole, but you can do right. Another great idea, if you can move to a weekly payroll for whatever you have left, even on your salary people, it will reduce anxiety. Knowing that I've got a check coming on Friday and not worrying about whether my check next month is going to come or not will help them tremendously. The more often you get paid, the easier it is to plan your money, plan your budgets. It will help everybody who's involved, everybody who's still getting a paycheck. And even if all they're doing is collecting PTOs, do it every week. It's probably the best, short of paying for their health care, it's probably the best thing you could do for your employees. Cover medical costs for furloughed staff if you can. Some are even covering it for their families if you can, but remember, that's going to burn through your cash and affect how far out you can keep the company going, which is why it's so important to do the cash flow calculations through a logical, foreseeable future. Do some charity work. I talked about it earlier. You've got vans and drivers. I had one client who's actually letting his employees use the vans to go do Uber Eats deliveries and stuff on their insurance, the whole bit. I don't know how wise that is, but my God, it sure was generous. Worked with a former client, a past client this week. Matter of fact, I think every client I've had for the past 10 years I've talked to in the past week. They're actually helping their employees file unemployment. They have the unemployment paperwork for them there. They have computers for them to log into and file the paperwork online. They actually did the research to know, if this is your last paycheck and you file for your unemployment, here's when your first unemployment payment is. And they actually gave them a calendar that showed them the dates so they could take it home and show their family and say, yeah, I got laid off today, but here's what's going to happen. God, I mean, that's just awesome. We can do that. Again, anytime you can do something for the community without expecting anything in return, it's a good break. It'll help you feel better about all of this as well. Communicate. Yeah, here we are. So some leadership tips. Your staff, communicate daily. Right now, we're in crisis. Things are changing by the hour. We're having news releases all the time. Communicate daily. Let them know what's changed and how it affects what you said yesterday. Yesterday we said this is what happens today, here's what we're going to do next, I'll talk to you again tomorrow. The fact that it's changing may be embarrassing to you. You don't control the future and you don't know how to predict everything that's going to happen. The fact that you're going to be wrong and you're going to make decisions that are only good for one day is a small price to pay for helping them be confident that as soon as something changes, they're going to hear about it. Be consistent, but be honest. I mean, the situation is going to change hourly, and if you have to communicate more than once in a day, do that. If you have a client tell you on Tuesday that, hey, that job in June is going to happen, don't you guys worry about it, and then on Wednesday they call back and say, nope, we're canceling, communicate that. Let people know, here's what it affects, here's when we're going to communicate with you again. No matter how stressed you are as an owner or a management team, your employees, their reality is 10 times worse. You probably have more means than they do. You're still probably going to have a business when this is all said and done. They don't know how they're going to put groceries on the table in 2 weeks. Their reality is a lot worse. So find someone else to worry with. Do not worry with your employees. Okay? Tell them what they need to know. Be honest with them, answer their questions, help them as much as you possibly can, and then go lock yourself in a closet and get into the fetal position until you're ready to do it again. I've got a little nest over here right by my desk for fetal position. I have used it several times. Your freelance team. Many of you know that they're part of your family and they're part of your community, and you already treat them like that. In the new world that we're going to be in after this is over, when it's all said and done, the biggest change in our industry is that we're going to be more and more a gig economy. More and more we're going to rely on outsourcing. The reason so many of you are having to lay off a lot of employees, you don't have cash in the bank, is because of the way we've let our industry evolve into trying to maintain employees and reduce our dependence on freelancers. And I know all the reasons why you thought that was a good idea. You're not going to hear me encouraging you to do that. You have a chance at a do-over. That freelance community, you need them way more than they need you. Maybe not today, but when the economy kicks back in, they're going to be important to you. So keep them in the loop. You don't have to communicate with them daily, but and don't assume they know the big picture. Many of them are isolated. They don't have that, they don't have the world view that you may have. If you have any kind of a cancellation fee you can afford to extend to them, please do it. It may be a token amount, and it may make them angry, but they will go through the stages of grief and one day remember that you did that for them. Invite them in when we can start getting together again in person. We may not be able to hug, but at least we can be in the same room. Make sure they're invited. They're going to be even more isolated than most of us are. Customers. You've told them that you're going to sanitize everything. That's the minimum you need to do. Of course, you've told them you're working from home, and you should be offer to help them with their tough decisions. Their field of vision might be more narrow than you think, particularly the meeting planner channel. If you work with meeting planners and event planners, particularly independent people, again, their worldview may be very narrow. They're basically a freelancer. You might be able to help them with their tough decisions and have, garner their loyalty for the future. Several people have asked me about marketing. It's not time to market yet. Do good. That's the best marketing you can do right now. Avoid any self-serving marketing campaigns or anything right now. It saddens me when I get on Facebook or LinkedIn and I see people promoting things as if they've not even looked at the headlines lately. Maybe they just had it in the queue and forgot to undo it, but that's going to reflect poorly on them in the long run. So finally, when you're communicating with customers and doing public communications, email blasts, always remember that you are indirectly communicating with your employees too. Matter of fact, sometimes the best way to communicate with your employees is to tell your customers. Because your employees are looking and say, what are we telling our customers? And if what you're telling customers and what you're telling employees aren't the same thing, game over. That's what I mean about being consistent. So think about your employees. When you're thinking about who you're talking to in that communique, Picture an upset employee. Make sure you're saying something that helps them understand what's going on or what you're doing about it as a company. And that communique will be even better for your customers. All right, let's look ahead a little bit. This pandemic crisis supersedes our business crisis. I'm serious. This is not, eventually, weeks, probably months, we're going to be in waiting mode. We're not in waiting mode. We're not in airplane mode yet. We have some work that we need to do before we get to sit down and stare at each other at home and do puzzles. But there's things we can do to recast our business in the new normal when we get there. It's not going to be in a week. It might be in a couple of weeks. We'll know it when we see it, when it's time to focus our energy on from damage to control to maintenance to looking at the future. You will market your business again, but your customers may not be where you left them. Not only may the people that you're used to talking to be gone or have changed jobs or be unemployed, the mindsets of the organizations that we're used to selling to might be in a different place. Their strategies are going to change, just like your strategy is going to change. So it's not going to be business as usual. Marketing is going to take a lot of strategic thinking to figure out how you're going to be placing yourself in that marketplace going forward. We're not going to figure it out in the next 2 weeks. Just know that it won't be business as usual. And yeah, and we'll talk again next week. I've already decided, I'll talk more about it in a minute, about doing more of these webinars to help you through these things and progress the messaging and the things that we need to talk about as the weeks progress. We'll talk again next week, and we will touch on more of this stuff. Now, my best advice is reduce now more than you think you need to. And it's much easier to add back than reduce later. Look at that August timeline, look at that cash flow projection, and make your decisions based on that. You will make better decisions, and you will not have to go back again and again and again to your labor pool and whittle them away, which is absolutely terrifying for them. Don't terrify them if you can avoid it. Quarantine mandate and enforcement, if it hasn't happened, it's already happening. And I'm in Dallas. It's already happening. We've shut down restaurants. It's takeout only. Non-essential businesses are being asked to go home. All gyms and athletic studios and sports facilities are closed. Everything else is going to close. It's not as severe here as it is, say, in Ohio or in parts of California, where the government is a little bit more proactive. We don't have a national coordination on this, so we have all sorts of different responses all over the country. We have to stay home. We have to stop the the spread of the pandemic, and the only way to do that is isolate ourselves. There's no other way to do it. I got a email this morning, a message this morning from a worker in Shanghai that I know, who said, hey, some industries in Shanghai are being allowed to go back to the office, and this is 2.5 months after they were isolated. And China was draconian about their social distancing and their shutdown. So a country which has a lot of issues and was probably extremely severe about how they did this. That's 2.5 months, and they're just now looking at letting people back out onto the streets. We really haven't even started shutting down yet. So it's going to last longer than any of us want to think it's going to last. We don't need to hoard food. We don't need to buy any more toilet paper because our supply chains aren't compromised yet, and those services can continue to operate. And honestly, most of them are hiring. So do right whenever you can in this process. Okay? Reconcile any of the personal sacrifices that you need to make as an owner or executive in your business. Get over that so that you have more positive energy to help the people around you and be empathetic to their situation. Even if you can't help them, you can listen. Communicate more often than you think you need to. If you find that you're starting to repeat the same message over and over again, you can say it a little bit less often. I get it. But first of all, just keep talking. So I see a bunch of questions already asked. If you've got questions, You know, please put them in Q&A box. I will try and get to them. I've probably got 30 minutes left in me for sure. So I'm going to keep going. So stay on with me as long as you absolutely want. Y'all please use the Q&A box if you can. I'm not seeing all the stuff on the chat thing, but I will review those later. So thank you for your comments along the way. All right, let's go look at some questions. All right. So somebody's asking about working from office to support virtual meetings. A quick answer is that as long as you're treating it like an operating room and you're being utmost careful, as long as you don't have a government mandate or directive to stop doing that, just be very, very, very careful. There'll be a point in time where it's going to look dangerous. We may not be there yet in every community, but a lot of communities that would be considered dangerous. I had a call with a nice company today, and I'm sorry I probably embarrassed them because I think I chastised them for having 3 people sitting in a conference room at the office talking to me when they should all been at home. But I'm dealing with this every hour of every day, so I'm probably a little bit more sensitive to it. So go home if you can. Stay home. If a question about an event producer is considering whether to cancel the current environment, isn't it better for them to wait if they can to cancel if a government mandates cancellation, not the event organizer? Okay, so this is basically a force majeure question. There's a point in time we're waiting for force majeure to cancel your event, saying it's an act of God. The governor declares an emergency, the president declares an emergency. The good news is you're going to get a refund from your venue for some of your expenses. You're going to get your money back. That's not the right way to go about it. This is a pandemic. This is not an inconvenience. We can't wait it out. The fact of the matter is you're going to have to cancel events. Do the prudent thing, protect the health and well-being of your audience. They'll remember if you didn't. My wife's very involved in the dog, sport dog community. There was an event that the organizer decided to continue having that event this week, and that's not reflecting well. The organizations involved with that are not going to be happy with that person. Just don't do it. Looking for September business. Clients, especially new clients, will likely be reluctant to pay large deposits. So if you've got a large event in September, yeah, it's going to be hard to collect a deposit right now. Don't collect a deposit. Charge them for pre-pro. It's 2 different things. Just change the conversation. This is a great question. Our traditional way of thinking about deposits is to hold it, give me some money to work with. No, ask for the money you need to do. Here's the work I need to do. Here's the cost for that. If you want us to start working on your project, I'll start as soon as you pay us. We can get this work done now, and here's why you need to get it done now, and then we can go on hiatus until it's time to do work again. Just don't treat it as a percentage of a job. Charge them for the work that is going to be done. It'll keep a little bit of your cash flow going. It'll keep some employees engaged. It helps your customer have the right economic mindset about their event. And if the event postpones, that work is not wasted. Right? This is work you can apply to something later. So, next question. Yeah, do you think companies like Amazon would contract us for labor trucking delivery? Absolutely. My window faces the street in a busy neighborhood, and I'm watching contract trucks drive up and down my street all day long. Absolutely. If you got trucks and drivers, Amazon, but you may want to go to a grocery store chain too and do the same thing, because groceries are doing home delivery, lots of shut-ins. But yeah, absolutely, you could probably keep some people working. You're not going to make any money. You're not going to make a ton of money, but you're going to feel a lot better about having done something that's not only good for your people and yourself, but it's good for the community. And I think that would be great. All right. We've called customers. If you haven't yet done so, communicate experiencing the situation together, strength in numbers. We've had some great discussions with them, and they are asking us when to book, puts companies in great position in bad situation, ask clients about event insurance. Thank you. She's sharing with us some things that she's doing. getting out in front of this is important, as far out in front as you can. Getting out in front of May events, it's that ship may have sailed, but you may still need to do some of that. Getting out in front of cancellations are going to happen June, July, and August on into the fall. By all means, have those conversations. If you're afraid that you're going to make the client think about canceling and find out that you're canceled sooner than later, understand that that is a good thing for you. It gets rid of a false hope. It helps you make better decisions. If your job's going to cancel, it also gives you a chance to say, have you looked at rescheduling? Have you looked at postponement? Have you looked at turning it into a streaming event? Have you looked at other ways of going about this and see what you can salvage out of it? Question, what type of prudent communication should we be posting on website and social media regarding company other than promoting streaming for live events? If I see another promotion for streaming for live events, I just might scream, but I know they're necessary and important. Yeah, you need to talk about exact conversation I had about 2 hours ago with some wonderful folks. In your community, do good things for your community. Okay? It's not just to self-promote, it's to remind other people that they could be doing them as well. So if you're going to go down and volunteer at the food bank, say, hey, here's what we're doing. We're volunteering at the food bank. Make sure it's entirely voluntary on your employees' part. And make sure that you talk about the other people there that are volunteering as well. Be seen doing good, but do good, and things will take care of themselves. So I wouldn't over promote it. I wouldn't try and get too much leverage out of it, other than reminding people that there's a chance to do something positive in this situation, and remind them of doing that. At this point, that's probably all I would be doing for the next couple of weeks, is talking about that. Do you need to make public announcements that you've had layoffs? Not necessarily. Everybody's making layoffs. It's pretty universal. What you can say is that you're taking care of your employees the best you can. You have a team of people that are going to be in airplane mode until things come back again. You can talk about that. But again, it's not time to self-promote. It's not time to put a feather in your cap. Spend that energy doing good for your community, and that will pay off. Those companies that are reducing their staff 60 to 70%, how many employees average do they have? Of the people that I talk to, obviously anybody with under 10 employees is probably down to 2, maybe 3 at the most, but I'm dealing with people who have 150 employees. That's kind of my sweet spot. So they're laying off basically their entire hourly staff, and probably a good chunk of their salary staff as well. So it's, there's no work, there's no revenue, there's no revenue for even the foreseeable future. It's the only prudent thing they can do. It's devastating. But in the first 10 calls I had on Monday, the average was 60%. I actually put pencil to paper. It's going up now. Some of those companies, after I talked to them, have gone back and gone a little bit deeper. Some hadn't announced the layoffs yet and revised their plans. Again, their goal is to keep the company going so that you can hire people back one day. Keeping a few people around for the short term, if it means that you're going to go out of business, isn't going to help the way that you want it to. If that's what you want to do and that'll make you feel better, by all means do it. I'm certainly not going to judge that. I'm not going to say, oh, you're a horrible person, you let your business crash, but you took care of people. No, take care of people, you be you. But if your goal is to come back from this and be a good place to work later, then you're going to have to make some hard choices. And I'm sorry, it sucks. I've done it before, and I've been deep in it for weeks now. It's hard, but I'm here to give you the straight dope. I'm sorry, I'm going to skim through some of these questions. I realize sometimes we're going to have to rant a little bit, and I'm going to try and avoid questions that are just born out of anger and see if we can find some questions that are helpful. Please post them. I'm not judging you. You're at a tough spot. So Tom, thanks for this. Community is really needed, all in one place. Not really, but is there a place or group that has or can help develop a shared terms and conditions set of documents? Also, there is a 1 to 2 terms and conditions for freelancers that others have used. Um, we're really kind of lacking in communities for our industry, and at the risk of self-promoting, we've got a Facebook group, called AV Matters Facebook group, where we just talk about business, and the people are sharing stuff. It's a great place to start that dialogue and ask that questions. Um, in the webinars that will come, and I got to look at my whiteboard over here, it's probably in 4 weeks, I'll start talking about what your terms and conditions should look like in the future, and how those might pan out and how those would play. And certainly there's best practices. We're working with freelancers. I was a freelancer myself for many, many years. My first company was a staffing company. I traveled the country doing shows. I employed a lot of freelancers in my management role. I have a lot of opinions about, how you treat freelancers and how to do that well. Certainly had webinars and stuff on it, but we'll be talking more about that in the weeks to come, because we need to do a better job of that on this other side. So thank you for bringing that up. Here, impossible question. Yes, it is. Thank you for knowing that. What do you think the rate of recovery model is August through end of year, knowing we are facing global recession, depression? It is an impossible question, but I can tell you, based on what happened to us in 9/11, which is a question somebody else asked. If you'll remember, 9/11 happened in a recession. So we were already in a recession when that happened, and boom, things got worse. The recovery coming out of that was slow. We started back working in January, but we really didn't have a normal January to the next year. I think we went through 2 quarters before companies figured out how to spend money and what was the best way for them to do that. A better example I was thinking about earlier today was back in '87. During that recession, everything just shut down. There was just no work, and I was in a bubble. I was a freelancer. I had a small company. We didn't have all these internet and things so we can understand stuff. So I was a little shocked at what was going on, not knowing how to deal with it. But I do remember fondly that our first major gig in '88, the theme of the tour was making it great in '88. And I think it was Pizza Hut or somebody like that. And we were touring around the company, and they were revving up their franchise holders. And it just felt really good to get back. Corporations will start wanting to spend money on those things. It may not be in first quarter of next year if we're through this in the fall, but it will certainly probably be there by the second quarter. So I think I'm fairly confident we're going to get through the pandemic part of this in the next 90 days. The recovery part is going to take longer. The depression or recession that we have is really out of our control. How long that will take to sort out, we don't know. Hopefully it'll be a 6-month thing or less, in which case we can look forward to a much, much better 2021. But let's keep asking that question. That's one of those things. Let's keep asking that and see how our answer evolves, and then retool our response based on that. Question, how can we use technology and innovation to do things differently now and possible in the future and streamline our operations so that we come out of this stronger? Do you have examples? Yeah, I've got a lot of examples about things that you can do to make your business more scalable, much more viable. This is not the right time to start talking about them, but stay tuned. I'm gonna overshare over the next several weeks. I have a lot of opinions about this. This is what I've been doing. This is my life, and I answer that question all the time. So I will tell you what I think the best practices are. And there's so much technology that we can use now that will streamline what we do, if we can let go of some things that we've held on to for a really, really long time. Some of which go back to, well, the '80s. Let's see. Yes, the recording will be available after this. Absolutely, by all means. Somebody just said that Massachusetts waives the 1-week waiting period for unemployment benefits. I talked to a company in Minnesota yesterday who says that I think they have instant unemployment benefits. Whatever you think about unemployment or whatever you know about unemployment, check again. It's probably changed. I find that I'm not really up to date on unemployment law, and of course, I'd have to know 50 states, and then I've got provinces and things like that. So find out and share. Share that with people on Facebook or LinkedIn. Go to the AV Matters Facebook group. Let's talk about that. Question, I have an installation to complete over the next 2 weeks. My client wants to finish and we could use the payment. Yeah. Would you recommend sending my team into the field if we can maintain a social distancing, sanitary work conditions, crew of 5 on the job site along with a GC? Yeah, I think, work in progress. I mean, there's a risk there, and obviously employees have to make a decision. I would give them a choice. This becomes really personal. My wife has a compromised immune system, and I couldn't risk it. I can't go out there. I run a risk every time if I go to the grocery store. So I'm trying to limit that to every 5 days. And, basically I cover myself with hand sanitizer before and after. So they may not be able to make that choice and choose to do that, but absolutely under the right conditions, think about it. We've got Amazon fulfillment centers that are packed full of people doing jobs. I'm sure they're taking the precautions. Your grocery store has people in it. We don't want them to go home. There are some services that happen. Let's just use our best sense or common sense. And then hopefully, we'll see what the government says about maybe restricting that or not, in which case we're going to have to follow that. But right now, based on that scenario, take all the precautions, get the work done, put the money in the bank. It'll keep your business going longer. It'll help those employees. Yeah, right now I'd say I'd probably do it. Ask me again tomorrow, I might have a different answer. Another question, Tom, there's a feeling amongst some of the owners I've spoken with, and I'm glad you guys are talking. I mean, talk to the other owners, talk to your colleagues. Good for you. I've spoken to them that when things begin to return to normal, the large in-house operators will likely drastically drop their pricing in order to make up lost ground. Any thoughts on that? Well, as an event planner myself, an event producer myself, I've seen some of the in-house pricing and some of their terms and conditions, and they need to do something. they need to get in line with the rest of the world because they're part of the problem. Having said that, yeah, are you going to have price competition? You darn right you are. But remember that example I told you about the company who had millions of dollars in the bank and could afford to carry his employees to the end of the year? Okay. He doesn't sell to price shoppers. What has made him successful and continues to make him successful is he doesn't do work that's not worth it. So what are you doing to not have to deal with price shoppers and low margin work? And that's the bigger question. You sell to the right people, they don't put up with that crap from in-house. They wouldn't use them anyway. So hopefully in-house isn't your competition. Right now, for a lot of you, you are your competition. You're competing against yourself when you're going up against in-house. So we'll talk more about that and how to be in a better position and get the margins of this industry back up where they need to be. It may mean that you do less work, but you'll end up with more money, and that's what really, really matters. I've got lots of follow-up notes from people because I've had conversations with them, updates about, one of them just said they've closed their offices, and good for you. That's the right call. You weren't doing that when I talked to you 2 days ago, but you've done it now. That's the world we're in. It's changing daily, changing hourly. Do we need to sterilize all of our gear? There's a lot of good stuff online. And sorry, I'm still not in the habit of not touching my face. You get you a bottle of water, you put a couple tablespoons of bleach in it, you spray stuff down, you wipe it off, you throw that dirty rag into a bucket that also has bleach in it, wring it out and use it again. It's not really that hard. It's sanitize, not sterilize. So by all means, sanitize your equipment. If your equipment's going to sit idle for 3 months, don't worry about it. It's going to sanitize itself. But we actually don't know how long the virus lasts on metal. I have heard up to 30 days. The initial reports were 12 days. I'm seeing a lot of reports that extend it quite a bit. So yeah, that's a big issue. So the type of material it is affects how long it lasts. I am not an epidemiologist. I'm not an expert on this. Get the information you need. But yeah, there's nothing wrong says we can't sanitize some stuff. Heck, it was dirty anyway. But wait till it's safe to work in the warehouse again. Should we be paying our employees to volunteer in the community? That's a great question. It's up to you. I would certainly facilitate them volunteering in the community. If they're being paid and there's nothing for them to do, then technically you are paying them to volunteer in the community if you think about it. So accommodate them volunteering in the community, and that's the same thing as paying them. So if you're on half salary and you're working from home and there's nothing to do, and you can go down to the food bank and work safely, who would stop you? If they do, send them my way. I'll give them a good talking to. How do you be respectful of layoffs? Okay, how do you do respectful layoffs over phone, email when quarantined? Yeah, great question. I remember after 9/11, I had an employee who was on the road. I can't even remember where he was. He's probably in Florida somewhere, and I had to lay him off over the phone. It sucks. It's really hard. Give them good information. Give them good information the best way that you can. Why not fire up a video conference and at least look them in the eye and tell them that. Make that effort. But it's better that they know. We don't need to come together and run that risk to do that. So what would be respectful? Do it on video if you possibly can. As a freelancer, do you think it might be wise to offer a getting back to normal rate? My regular production commodities for a few months. Once we start live event productions again, what percentage below my rate should I offer? So as a former freelancer, you're going to have two types of buyers when you go back to work. You'll have the ones that remember what they've paid you in the past and how valuable you are to them, and they're going to try and maintain that rate as best they can and hire you when they can hire you for your rate. They might offer you jobs that are at a lower rate in order to get you back to work doing stuff that you probably wouldn't have done before. And then there are people who are going to take advantage of you saying you're desperate for work, so I'm going to try and lowball you at a low rate. You decide who to work for. None of anybody in my client pool, in my advisory pool, that brings up the subject of lowballing talent because they can is gonna get my wrath. I think that's horrible. I don't mind you beating up your wholesale rental company on equipment prices, but when you start taking advantage of people, you lose my respect. Have respect for yourself. You do what's right for you. You take the work that you need to take. I don't think you necessarily need to drop your rate, as be realistic about what the market rate is at that time. And ask them, are you charging me less because you can't get money from your customer, or are you trying to pay me less because you think you could make more money because it's a buyer's market? And if you get an honest answer, then you can make your choice about what to do. I'm sorry that's going to happen, but I'm afraid it's going to happen. I freelanced for a long time. Honestly, I know it's going to happen, and it makes me very, very unhappy. I like to think better of us in our industry than that. Difference between a furlough and a layoff. Okay, a layoff is basically you're terminated, you lose your benefits and everything, you can file unemployment. Furlough means that you are still technically an employee. I just don't pay you. I will tell you when I pay you back, but you get to keep your benefits. So you can stay on your health care, you can maintain your PTOs, you can draw on your PTOs if you want, stay in the 401k plan, all that kind of stuff. So when Freeman furloughed 7,200 employees, they're still Freeman employees. There's just no work for them for 90 days, as opposed to a layoff, which is being fired. So furlough if you can afford to maintain benefits, but again, do the cash flow projection on that. We're starting to get cabin fever out here in Seattle. Remember, Seattle is 2 weeks ahead of us in this cycle. So is San Francisco. I was thinking of having a get-together outdoors at a park with 6 feet social distancing apart. At least people can still go outdoors and get fresh air. One, I highly recommend going outdoors and getting fresh air. One, sunlight is good for killing the virus because the virus doesn't like warmth and it doesn't like sunshine. So if you can get outside, when we say stay home, we don't stay cooped up in a house. Social distance. Go out in the yard. Go to a park. If you want to have a social distancing meetup outdoors, I think that's actually kind of fun. That's probably interesting. Let's all stand 6 feet apart and shout at each other or sing together. Why not? Again, I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know what's recommended or appropriate in that, but man, I like the idea. I will be there soon. Probably this time next week, I'm going to be bouncing off the walls along with our border collie. I'm quite concerned about leaving my premises unattended for extended periods of time. Police will be stretched. People will be more ready to take risks than usual, short of sitting behind my door with a shotgun. Any recommendations to steps to take? I'm wondering about splitting some of our more expensive stock between buildings so we don't lose a catastrophic percentage of our stock in a hit. Well, okay. I know you probably have insurance, and that's what insurance is for, number one. Number two, right now in our news cycle in certain communities, I'm seeing people worried about rioting in the streets and lawlessness and this kind of thing. It's not the zombie apocalypse. We have a viral epidemic. It's a little bit different. So honestly, your health and well-being is far more important than anything in your building. Yeah, I don't have a better way of answering that, saying I think it's the wrong question, but I understand it's the question that you have right now. Give it a couple of days and see how you feel. I have more faith in humanity and our police system and our first responders than that. And that's also why we buy insurance. We don't want to have to use it, but that's what it's there for. Having said all that, it's ultimately going to be your choice about what you think is appropriate, but I'd hate to see you feel that you have to do that. How can we keep up team morale for those of adopting to this for the first time? We have the internet now. There's so many things that we can do together. I've got folks who are having team meetings online every day. I have friends who are working remotely for corporations that are already starting to have cocktail parties. Thursday evening at 5 o'clock, everybody get a line, shoot the breeze, like you're around a water cooler with a cocktail. Instead of going to a bar after work, you go get a drink out of your kitchen and go sit down in front of your computer. So you can find creative ways to do that. I've got millennial children. They've been watching movies together online like forever. There's a lot of things that we can do together online that my generation would never think of. Sitting down and watching a movie, the same movie at the same time with somebody else who's on the other side of the country. How in the world do you do that? Apparently you can. So be creative, and I think you'll have fun. And you'll do some stuff, and it'll be a total bust, but you'll have fun. You'll have a story talking about it, which means it was worth the while, and that'll keep your morale up. Another question: what do you predict that the model will look like in August and December? I don't know. I will talk about what our business model will look like in the weeks to come. All of you are going to become startup companies again, with few exceptions. If you're Freeman Corporation or PSAV or PRGVER, yeah, you're going to start up at a much higher level. But for those of us with less than 100 or 50 employees, we're really going to be back up into startup mode, and we've forgotten what that looks like. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to need to do and rethink. And oh, by the way, you're going to do it differently than you did 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years ago. Let's make you a better startup, and we'll talk about that in the weeks to come. I'm still going here. It's 2:20. I'm going to give a few more questions here. We've had 60 questions, and I know I've probably only gone through about 30 of them. How do you decide who to lay off, and how do you explain to them why you chose them yet kept someone else in a similar role on board? Text, for example. Yeah, that's a tough one. Sometimes you're going to choose on longevity, how long they've been there. But I think the things that we've been talking about in a lot of the meetings I've been in is when it comes to a work class of employee like a tech, you're probably need to lay off most of them anyway, and you're going to keep department heads or maybe one or two people. I don't know that there's a good answer to explain to anybody why they were chosen versus someone else, other than to say it was a really hard decision. It becomes a lot easier to explain this to them and be convincing when you feel that you have cut as deep as you absolutely have to. If you say, I kept this person because we think they're going to be more valuable with us in the long run, and then you turn around and you lay them off 2 weeks later, that doesn't reflect well. So make sure you've made the deepest cuts that you think you need to make to survive what you believe is going to be the window of opportunity. And so you can confidently look that other person in the eye and says, I know it's hard, but this is what I think we need to have so that we can start the business back up again and maintain the little bit of work that we have along the way. So there's no good answer to that. It's a hard question. I do invite, and I will tell you a couple of things here in a minute to invite you to do some of that stuff. Matter of fact, let me cut to that right now before we start losing people. I need to make a couple of announcements. First of all, we're going to do this call every week. I will send all of you an invitation. You'll need to register for a weekly survival call webinar. Similar to this, we'll answer your questions. I'll present you some fresh content. We'll start moving you through the process as best I can, answer your questions along the way, and get us closer and closer to where we're ready to go into airplane mode and get ready for our eventual recovery. So I will send you an invite to that, get you registered. You'll register automatically for all 8 webinars. You don't have to register 8 times and make it a little bit easier on you. This webinar, unfortunately, was already in place, so I couldn't change it without dumping all of you. I have been doing Jumpstart workshops since 2016. We hundreds of people every year, 60, 70 companies every year. We're having to put them on hold. Next one was scheduled to be in May. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to have that. The prudent thing is to cancel it. But we're working on an online delivery system. So that's one of the things that as soon as we get past this initial period of helping people through the crisis, we're going to figure out how to take that content and put it online. It is fortunately happens to be the exact things that we need to be doing right now, preparing for the future, preparing for our rebirth. So it's not going to take a lot of retooling other than to make it online friendly instead of workshop friendly. We are going to lower the pricing dramatically. It typically, our attendees end up spending $5,000 to send 2 people to a workshop between travel and fees and everything else, hotel. We're going to get that down dramatically and make it a company-wide access. So you'll have one low fee. Anybody that's in your company or who's left in your company can join the workshop, make it much more accessible for you to do. First things first, though, we've got to stabilize our industry and our businesses, and then we can start working on all of that stuff. I'm going to take a crack. The old guy's going to take a crack at doing a Facebook Live tomorrow. I'm going to give you a 5-minute update of what I've heard, what I've seen, maybe some advice that's fresh on top of what I've told you today. Then I'm going to answer questions for 20 minutes. I think I'm going to see how well I'm able to navigate that and do that, and whether it actually helps folks and it's valuable. And I invite your feedback. And if it's a dismal failure, just let me know. But if it's helpful, I'm more than happy to do that every day. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. Some of you may want to have a conversation. Please reach out to me. Go to my website, get the intro conversation. I'll give you 20 minutes of my time. I'll answer your questions as best I can, give you some direction. I know there's some things that are probably not right to answer in this environment. I'll help anybody in need. That's always been my mantra. There's not really a good way to monetize a crisis, so you may as well do the right thing for folks, is my theme, as I said to you earlier. So reach out to me, schedule some time, and I'd be happy to talk with you. Happy to talk with you. So with that, I'll do a few more questions as people start to drop off. Let's see, any thoughts on touring business that's postponed right now? How should we treat these clients differently than the one off events that's forced to push back 6 months. Well, all of your tours will probably come back in. They're probably sitting in your warehouse. You'll have to make a judgment call about whether you knock that show down, put it back on the shelf, or if you re-prep it and set it aside. Hopefully, you're getting some straight dope from your clients, your talent about what's going to happen. I will tell you that after 9/11, entertainment was the first thing back. Matter of fact, there was a concerted effort to get tours back out on the road because people couldn't travel yet, but we could get tours on the road, bus and truck, and get them to areas so that people could get out and start coming back to life. So I think tours will be back sooner than later. They may not be able to get the ticket prices they were getting before. They may be playing smaller venues, but I think touring will come back. So find out what they're going to do and help them with some ideas. Maybe help them find a smaller venue. Smaller venues, maybe downsize the show a little bit to help them make it easier. Good question here. We have a fully equipped boardroom in our office that we can stream from. Should we offer it up for free or to our customers, saying that they can pay whatever they can? Yes, except for the fact that you should probably not be getting people out and about. Again, this is going to be very regional. Many of you are not seeing the urgency to stay inside or stay home that we're seeing in some of the major markets. It's coming. I would say by Monday of next week, the handwriting is going to be on the wall for all of us, even the smaller markets. So it's a thoughtful idea. It may not be practical here in the near future. However, there is that period after airplane mode when we're taxiing to the gate, when we can get together again, where that may be valuable for them before they go out and have a big meeting. When they need to start communicate en masse again and they want to have a professional look and feel to it, all of that streaming stuff is going to become valuable again before we're actually putting events back in ballrooms and arenas. So start thinking about that. Do you have any recommendations on getting contracts proposals signed and how this relates to the terms and conditions, including cancellations? We work with many clients with long-standing relationships on many occasions without signed quotes. This was never an issue until now, and we're looking at making changes. Okay, yeah. So it's 2020. We should be getting signed quotes even from our long-term clients. We'll talk more about that. It's so easy to do electronically now. Though I will be honest with you, I have trouble getting people over 55 to sign do a DocuSign document. But maybe there's a younger person who could sign it for you. So we'll talk about that process and getting them comfortable with a very simple, 3-step process from proposal, amendment, signature. Honestly, you can't buy a house, you can't get a loan, you can't do any of this stuff nowadays without using some sort of electronic document signing device. So it's much easier, much more prevalent than you think it is. And it's time to get fully into that and really insist that we can't start work until we have this. You're making contracts to do work or agreements to do work. You need to make it as formal as you can, and it helps protect us in these situations. It may not seem friendly or trusting, but actually, mutual trust is a wonderful thing, and it's a way to mutually trust each other. Any insight on relief from the Small Business Administration? So there is an SBA emergency loan fund that you can apply for. It is dependent upon, you can go to sba.org, I believe, whatever it might be. You'll find the SBA. It's dependent on the governor in your state having declared a state of emergency that applies to your industry, and you can use that. You can apply for that. Now, I will say that if you can qualify for that, chances are you can get better terms out of your bank or a bank loan. You've got assets that can be borrowed against. So SBA is really for people who are at higher risk. And it's a very convoluted, kind of a painful process, but it's not going to be immediate relief that you're looking for. It's something that you're going to have a plan. You're going to have a business plan that gets you through the downturn, and you need to put that in writing just to apply for the loan. And let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna answer one more question here. That's a big question, but I'm going to answer it. Is every payment and refund negotiated individually with clients and vendors, or is there a standard in the industry of what we should be doing, keeping deposits, paying vendors, freelancers, the stuff that I talked about in the slide earlier? I know that some are not getting paid at all, and some are invoicing for 100%. We're in the middle of trying to get reimbursed from the client and trying to be fair with our subs. Okay, yeah. So there are parts of the live event industry that have been getting paid 100% up front for years. There are parts of the live event industry who have never asked for a deposit and are actually terrified at the prospect. You have the same customers. So you have a customer you're giving terms and conditions to and invoicing them and waiting 90 days to get paid, and you've got a colleague down the street who's getting paid 100% up front. Why is that? It's because you haven't asked. So getting paid up front for services, particularly services where we have a substantial commitment in front of the event, that the cost of the reservation and reserving capacity is very, very valuable. We need to change how we present the value in what we do so that we can appropriately recover the dollar value of pre-production and upfront money and production money. I would say for most of us, if you're a creative producer who this person is asking the question actually is, well, never mind the event production rental staging piece of it, you've done 99% of your work before we load in. No reason you shouldn't get paid for that in advance. The part of your work that is the production rental tactical side of it that you're subcontracting, there's also no reason you shouldn't get paid for that in advance, so that you can pay that subcontractor. There's no reason you can't have holdbacks, or that your client can't have a 10% holdback for changes and credits and things like that. The construction industry's been doing this for years. So there's a lot of things that we can model, and I'll talk more about that as we start going through this on a weekly basis. So, woo, wow. So what a difference a couple of weeks make. Thank you guys for being here. You've been a great audience. Thank you for the questions. I'm gonna keep reading questions until I understand everything that you've asked and see what I can put into future programs. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. We're all in this together. The show will go on. Show business is not going away. Meetings are not going away. And all of us are going to be there doing it. So thank you for your time and attention. I'm honored that you think I might have something valuable to say, and best of luck to you and all your difficult decisions. But let's keep talking. We got some work to do. Cheers.